have a ton of you guys, at least that I can hear from you.
Like last.
Yeah, I know, I swear, I don't mean to do it. I don't swear from my mind anyway. And I have some more, some chance.
Because we need that for good reason.
With that,
For good reason.
correct. Yeah, they would tell on me. I trust you guys. Kind of. Maybe not all of them. Plenty of them. All right. You know what's funny? Like, some things never change. So, Mr. Myers, right above me, he doesn't have a glass because obviously nothing gets glass. I can still hear it yelling. Still. So I guess he's like, he's yelling through his specific things on the computer. It's just kind of funny. All right. So anyway. Okay. So here we go. So we're going to do the lecture today on public opinion polling. I'm going to go through this group assignment. I also have there's a Fox News poll that came out. They do a poll every, about like trusting government and branch of the government. So we're going to take a look at that in terms of, how to do polls and random sampling and that sort of thing. And then the other thing I want to point out today is that Chapter 4 vocab practice is already up. So you can do that at your leisure. I think our vocab quiz is early next week. So you don't have to get it done this week, but I do want you to have access to the vocab so you can start it. It's only 18 terms, so it's not too bad. You do have your lesson plan for the week. I kind of went through it within the week today. And then tomorrow, when you're not in class, you're going to have two different sheets you're going to do. So when we get into, like after, so you're going to be in chapter 4, we're in chapter 7 right now, so we'll be following along. Chapter 4 talks about demographics and voting. Demographics are identifying characteristics. So you think about somebody's demographics being, their race or ethnicity, their gender identity, their socioeconomic status, the region in which they live, the community type that they live in. Those are all demographics. So we're going to take a look at voting by demographics, whether it's how often people in certain demographics vote or who they vote for. And so tomorrow, the introduction to that is you guys I'm going to give sheets of different characteristics. You guys are going to have to close your head, guess which way that person would vote, meaning Democrat or Republican. And the thing is, it typically, stereotyping is bad, right? But when we talk about voting by demographics, it's pretty much all we do is stereotyping into people. Okay, how do women vote? How do people in the South vote? How do African Americans vote? And of course, it doesn't mean everybody in that certain demographic. And what we'll learn too is that we have different identifying characteristics, right? So, the fact that I'm a woman might lead me to vote one way, but maybe, I'm evangelical Christian, and so that holds the other way too. Do you know what I mean? So, there's a lot of different things that people identify themselves with. And so, you kind of have to look at and see, which one are they going to weigh more in? And that actually is called identity politics. We'll get into that later. And then we have a sheet for you for tomorrow. The Tale of Two Friends. There's two girls, Melanie and Lindsay, who are actually two of my very, very best friends that I grew up with. And I give you a list of their demographic characteristics. And then you have to, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican. You have to guess based on all of that and say why. And then we're going to go to Wednesday, is your first due date for your polling project. And then we'll go through just the lecture on demographic voting, and then we'll do the state team Thursday, and then Friday, census. So we'll be done with chapter 4 by Friday, hopefully. And then you'll have a reading quiz on chapter 4 that's due by the end of the day Friday. I just finished writing that, and I'll open that up tomorrow. Okay. So we're gonna finish chapter 7 today, start reading chapter 4, and go from there. All right. Any questions on our reading here? Besides, like, when is it gonna blow up? The answer is probably today, right? Because that's how it rolls. Okay. So, okay, I think I'm ready. All right. So, if you got here in time, we saw our virtual spirit week. Yay, homecoming. So again, it's Saturday, so we're gonna I couldn't find my gift brother's hat, which is very unfortunate. That's my previous fishing hat, but they said they connected to their brother's hat. Okay. So today we're talking about public opinion. And I love this political cartoon here. So this guy's reading newspaper 4 and 5, don't trust Washington, and the survey 9 and 10, don't trust polls. So if you guys paid at all attention to 2016, what did all the polls say in terms of who was going to very decisively win the presidential election?
Hillary Clinton.
Correct. Who decisively won the electoral college and therefore the presidency?
President Trump.
Correct. So like, and it was starting to there's a clip, and I thought I still had it on here, but I couldn't find it. Of Brooke Ball, who's on CNN, and she was interviewing. It was like a week before the election. She was interviewing one of then candidate Trump, now President Trump, like strategist for campaigning. And she was arguing with her about the polls. Because he's like, he's gonna win, he's gonna win, he's gonna win. And she's like, no, literally, the polls say he's not gonna win. He's like, which polls? She's like, all the polls. Which one? All the polls. And like, she was right. Every single poll that was like nationally done, that was reputably done. And when I say reputably, I mean like there's different types of polling we'll learn about today that's not reputable. So like things that were done, you know, in the scientific way, we're saying that Hillary Clinton's gonna win. Now, of course, she did win, and she won the popular vote, but it was not, and so like the polls didn't specify that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like who's gonna win the popular vote and then lose the electoral vote. And at the end of the day, constitutionally, the popular vote doesn't matter. You know, I mean that doesn't dictate a presidency. The electoral college does, and you can debate, you know, whether or not that should be there at a different time, and we will. All right. So how to do polling well? Who's been eating staff in this class? Raise your hand. Okay. So Mrs. Haig and I have always wanted to do like a cross-curricular project between AP Gov and AP staff. It has never really worked in terms of like the time of it, but still we're gonna try. All right. So polling, which you may or may not already know from stats, or any type of statistics that you've ever seen before, has to have a few different things in it. So it has to have random sampling, meaning that every person in your audience has like the same likelihood of getting asked the same questions as anybody else. Okay. And it means that you're getting a wide variety of people. Like you guys, if I were to do a poll of how the citizens of Marysville feel about something, and I only sampled you, that's not a random sample. It's not a good sample. Well, first of all, I thought it was sample 5 either, because it's 28 or 27. attention. You're also not a random sample of people. They're all about the same age, right? Like, so if it was, should we raise taxes in Marysville? If that was the question, and all I did is survey, people who are anywhere from, 16 to 18 years old, that's not a good way to do it. It also has non-leading questions. And she would do oh my gosh, the polls that, so I always register for emails during a presidential election from whoever the two major candidates are, just because I want to kind of see what they're sending out, right, for both. And then whoever the president is, I also sign out, for their stuff so that I always see it. So of course I'm guessing, obviously, stuff from the president now, and then I'm getting stuff from the left. And like the way that they ask questions is a very leading way. Good polling has closed-ended questions. Yes, no, this percent, that percent, whatever, rather than like if you ask people to, whenever you put that option other and allow them to add in their own opinion, first of all, it's harder to like synthesize the data then. And then it also just screws up a lot of data. It's like if you're giving people options to put their own opinions in, then it's harder to categorize them into one group. Whereas like, this percent said yes, this percent said no. That's easy enough, right? You can put that in a nice little pie chart and everything's fine. And then a fair analysis of results. This is what campaigns don't do well, especially this last one. They do probably sometimes support the sample size, they do it for market error, but like statisticians in general are like such a shady group of people. It's totally outside of politics too, because whenever you get data, you never put questions out that you don't already have in mind what you want to answer, right? Especially in like public opinion polling. So you want to, like so many people, when they're analyzing their results and pushing out the results, very purposefully push out results like that are skewed. They don't change the data. They just choose what part of it they're going to let people know. Okay? So, and that, again, that's not just politicians. It's like pretty much anybody who does any polls anywhere. Unless it's like the Pew Research Center, right? Or like Gallup. So like these large companies whose job it is to conduct polls, and they don't really have like a horse in the race, so to speak. So like they will put out polls that are not skewed. But if you're looking for a specific result, odds are good your data is going to show that in some way, shape, or form. Did I do that again? Okay, so public opinion, this one your vocab questions, means the distribution of individual preferences for or evaluation of a given issue, candidate, or institution within a specific population. So public opinion means what do people think about something? That's essentially it. All right, again, random sample, every individual in the group has a known and equal chance of being selected. There's random digit dialing, although phone polls are going by the wayside because people don't answer their phone anymore, right? They don't have landlines for the most part. Like with the advent of caller ID back in the 90s, and you guys won't remember this, but I certainly will. That's when people stopped answering their phones. And that, or like, didn't stop, but that trend started going down. Now, like, my lovely phone will tell me, like, potential spam. I'm like, thank you, and I just won't answer that, right? And then we have a margin of error, And that's the fluctuation of like how accurate we think this data is. Okay, so like if we have, and I think this is on your reading, but if there's a question based on percent, so like you got to, you're like, why am I doing math? And then you go, but so if you have like a 2% margin of error, and like 54% of people said something that really means between 52 to 54. Okay, so that's, and this is how your margin of error. If you have a margin of error outside of 3%, you didn't do it right. We are not, in our polling project, we're not going to be that concerned about this margin of error, because your population size won't be big enough to really consider that. Okay, for text to polls and College Board loves for you to know the difference between text and polls, so make sure that you understand. You have exit polls, so if you walk, like literally when you walk out of the polling place, somebody with their, their clipboard, hold on, I have crap. Okay. Clipboard. And, okay, can I stop you and answer the total question? Sure. Who'd you vote for? And you're like, what did I tell you? So like that's the point of an exit poll. So they're trying to figure out where you voted on different issues, and they'll probably ask you sort of demographic information in here too, so that they can find out, like again, so they can kind of like put trends together. A push pull. A push pull is definition is taken for the purpose of providing information on an opponent that would lead respondents to vote against that candidate. So it's like essentially like negative advertising in a poll. However, push polls are often used as well by candidates to promote themselves in a way. So, like, their polls, I'll show you in a second, but anything that's like those really super leading questions, it doesn't give you, enough choices to cover everything, right? It's like all varying degrees of the answer yes, and like you don't have the option to really answer no. Those are push polls. Straw polls are unscientific surveys used to gauge public opinion on a variety of issues and policies. So when I said, all right, raise your hand if you're taking a deep test. Like, yeah, I am. Okay, that's a straw, right? So I just real quick, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, cool, that's it. And like, maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. Maybe somebody didn't hear me. Maybe somebody was, like making a sandwich while I was asking that, and so they weren't paying attention. Or like they heard, but like they didn't really raise their hand because they don't want to, or whatever. Okay? And then tracking polls are continuous surveys that enable a campaign or news organization to start a candidate's daily response point. So the Fox News poll that I'm going to show you later is a tracking poll, because they like literally will have all the stats for months and months and months and months that track like the same, ask the same question every single time. What is your trust level in the executive branch? What's your trust level in the legislative branch? What's your trust level in the judicial branch? So it doesn't have things. So they just sent one out. And it's over the weekend. For this last week. All right, so like I said, I end up like I subscribe to like every major politician, right? Who's running for president. And so I guess this was in like 2017 or 2018, right when the president started really blasting the mainstream media, okay? And I believe, like, because he loves to name calls, which I'll be honest, it's like, one thing that drives me nuts is, like, anybody who name calls, right? Because, like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's not professional, it's not necessary, right? Politics aside, it drives me crazy, okay? I don't care who it is. I just think that whoever occupies that office should be above saying, like, the mainstream media. Like, that's just ridiculous, right? So anyway, So this is when I got, and I always open them, and like, I want to see what, what people are asking, what people want to know. And here is the question. On which issues does the mainstream media do the worst job of representing President Trump? So that's his finding of the question. Immigration, economics, radical Islamic terrorism, flexible life values, social issues, religion, healthcare, Second Amendment rights. So, like, there's a few things wrong with that question. What's one of them?
There's no option, like none.
Right. Like, what if I think that the mainstream media is doing actually a decent job of representing the people? Like, there's no option there for me to say, like, I'm gonna leave out, right? There's no other option. Although I did just say you should have an other option, but, because then it's like it messes with your data, like how we can kind of put it together. So yeah, for sure that's one question or one issue with that. So there's no option to put none. What about like, so that's your choice. What about the way the question is worded itself?
It automatically assumes that the person taking the poll is assuming that the person thinks that there's some poor job the mainstream media is doing.
Exactly, right? So, like, if I wasn't thinking about it before and I read this, I'm like, gosh, you know what, you're right, like, you see the mainstream media, right? So, it's not just a question of, do you think, or do you believe that the mainstream media is representing the president fairly? Yes or no? Right? Like, that's a totally fair question, and it's totally different. But, as you see, as I showed you in the last one, this was put out by that, like, by the Trump organization, right? Like this. Because you have to understand, too, there's a difference between Trump the president and the Trump campaign. Okay? So even right now, like, you cannot campaign out of the Oval Office. Like, there's two separate entities. So this was put out by his political people, not his policy people. The other issue is just like the naming of things too, like radical Islamic terrorism, right? So it's designed to get people like amped up, right? So if you just said, even just said Islamic terrorism, I'm not saying that radical, but I'm just saying that particular way of putting that out there is very clever. Now the ones that are, who are you gonna vote for? The president or CP Joe Biden? Like, okay, like those are the ones that you're just that kind of stuff that's like, that's fine. That's why you can't, and I've never like, again, polls coming from any candidate should not, like, if you see results from any candidate polls, do not trust them. The people who are taking those polls are people who are like getting that information to even get the poll because like they subscribe to that web, right? There's very few people like me who subscribe to polls. Like there's usually people who are like, no, I get emails from the president, I support the president, or I get emails from Joe Biden, so I support Joe Biden. So like anytime you get those results, like 95% of the people who took the survey said they're going to vote for the president. Well, no kidding, because you sent it to his supporters. You know what I mean? So just be careful about it. You should always look and see who is pushing that forward. All right, so we have consensus issues and polarizing issues. The consensus issue is something that a substantial amount of population agrees on. Like a consensus issue always is respect the flag. That might look different to different people, okay, but most people are not going to put my flag off the wall throw it on the ground and dump, right? Like, people agree that that's not the, that's what we need to do. People agree that, there is, that, like, we enjoy a lot of freedom in this country and we should, right? Like, those are consensus issues. Polarizing issues are issues where there's two things. Number one, people feel very, very strongly about them on either side. And the difference between the alternatives is very large. Okay, so like the best issue, and some reason doesn't go on here, but like there isn't even as much of a difference that there is like the abortion issue, right? There is a vast difference between being pro-life and pro-choice, right? Yeah, there are nuances for sure, but for the most part, you are either like you're either pro-life or you're pro-choice, and there's a whole lot of people that feel very strongly on that issue to the point where they become single issue voters. And a single issue voter means like that's the issue they're voting on. They could agree with 99 other policy issues from the other side, but like the one issue that's the most important to them is vote on. Okay, so that's a single issue voter. And it's hard with polarizing issues to come to agreement, again, because of this part here, because the difference between the alternatives is stark. Okay, you can come to agreement on like tax policy. Okay, you can't come to an agreement easily or at all on the abortion issue because you either agree that it's okay or you don't. there's just not a lot of it. Okay. All right. Public opinion and policy. So policy again is any like law that's enacted. But the law, so policy happens because a law is passed, and then it stretches over to federal agencies to enact that policy. Okay. So public opinion and policy tend to shape each other. Sometimes public opinion shapes policy because they would supposedly found out that like people really want that, and so legislators would say, okay, the majority of the country, the majority of the people I represent, believe that this is very important. And so, this is what we're going to focus on. And then there's other times when policy shapes public opinion. Okay, so something that's already in place then would like either make people agree more with something or agree less with something. So healthcare is a really good example of both of these. Like there is, has been for, I would say probably like a decade and a half. It's really like when we started talking about an option of public health care. Okay, besides like Medicare and Medicaid, like universal public health care. And so public opinion in support of government-run healthcare, public healthcare, started rising quite a bit. And so then the people who, in Congress who agreed with that sort of thing already felt safe enough to start trying to legislate that. Okay? Because this is what people want. This is what we're going to do. And then, they passed the Affordable Care Act, which you might know better as Obamacare. And right when, like, literally day one, where you could register for the ACA, the website, like, crap, done. Like, no, I'm not. These people are like, stop! Universal health care is not something you can, right? So then, public opinion, like the policy is put in place, it doesn't work exactly the way people wanted it to. Now, there was a lot of other issues with the ACA too, besides the fact that they don't think that, right? But there's a lot of good that it did, and there's a lot of ways that it can be improved on a lot. But public opinion, and right after that, was like, no, this is not something that the government should handle, because clearly they don't know how, right? They don't have the time to do it. the way that obviously politicians follow public opinion is super clear. And then, but who are they listening to? Meaning, like, again, if you're only listening to your supporters, that's not a good way to do it. Because your supporters are going to give you different answers than people who don't support. And your supporters could be a smaller minority of the population than you actually think it is. Strength of opinion, so intensity, of course, is the degree to which people feel strongly about their opinion. I'm sure a lot of you have very intense opinions on a couple of issues, right? You probably don't have intense feelings on more than like where you would, that's your main issue, those are the issues you're really. And the problem is when they're different, like when you have like super intense issues on, let's say you're pro-choice, but you're also pro-gun rights, right? Like if you feel super strongly about both of those, you're looking at two different parts. So you, at the end of the day, have to decide, which of the parties, because most of us agree with stuff from both. You have to decide like which one of those issues, or which two or three of those issues, are you most intense about, and which others can you kind of live with not having done that. A lot of times the intensity of your issues comes from personal experience, your upbringing, the region that you live in. Really, it's personal experience, though. Especially if you live in like what's called a pretty homogenous place, right? So you can, it's kind of like our own little method of selective exposure, when you only live around people who look like you and think like you, and have kind of that same experiences as you. When you get out of that space, is often when you when some of your opinions might change one way or another. Latency to manifest. So a latent opinion is opinions that you have, but you just kind of don't realize it yet. We haven't really said that we think anything's a big deal. It's just kind of hanging out there waiting. Okay. So if people speak to those opinions, it can bring them out. And an example of that is fear. Right? There's a lot of times that people don't realize that they really should be afraid of something until somebody points out that it's a problem. Right? There's a lot of people who didn't have super strong issues at all on, super strong opinions at all on people crossing the southern border illegally until then candidate Trump made a big deal out of it and said, we gotta go to law, we do coming over and try the Republicans, and then you look at it and say, are they wrong? Like they're not. But a lot of people that brought out this fear and xenophobia on a lot of people, right? So they didn't know it was there. They didn't realize it was there until somebody's like, well, you should think about this, right? People were not, you're always sort of like in the back of your mind worried about it, but nobody was really that worried about being attacked by terrorists until we were, right? Like that is not something I know you guys are super young, but I was not in victim of a lot of that, but I was just good at work. And I remember specifically never having given a thought to that before. It's never been a thought. So I did flag saving a building, that's ridiculous. It's when they did. And so now it just that becomes this manifest opinion, right? We need to fight terrorism. Everybody believes that. And then again, to the degree to which people believe that depends on how big of an issue it still is. And the one thing that Americans do not have collectively is a long attention span. So, like, people already, like, yeah, like, I'm still thinking, in the back of my mind, like, I don't want to be attacked again. But is it something that I'm, like, really strongly considering and strongly worrying about on a daily basis, as I was through September, October, November, December of 2001? Yeah. Should I be? Maybe. The answer more about it, I don't know. And then this other term, salient. So salient issue is an issue that people believe is important to them. And salient issues are often very personal. So like if you ask somebody why they would vote for a certain candidate, well, I think the economy is good. The economy's been really good for me, so I'm going to do that. So like it's something that's very like affects them in a very real way. Whether it's monetary, whether it's somebody in their family who's like they think they're going to be taken away or violated or something like that. So those are issues that, and like you guys right now might look at candidates who are saying like, yeah, everybody should have free college. Right? Yeah, because you're 16, 17, 18 years old. So that could change based on like your kind of where you're at in your life. Oh my gosh, is that it? Stop it. Look at that. It's 10:36 and I'm done lecturing. Can you believe it? All right, but that doesn't mean we're done because I have to get to this group assignment. Well, first of all, before I do that, I want to go to, this did not work. I did this to my, if you look back, this is a pain in the butt. Because I totally posted this material, but I did it from my phone at like 11 o'clock last night when I was like half asleep. I really have to. I'd already been asleep for like 3 hours, and then I woke up and I just saw that everything I should have. But I guess it didn't. I'll populate the poll, and that's how I need to look at it. I'll need to look at it. Darn it. Okay. Let me find something that actually did vote. And that is a script assignment. Okay. So here's your public opinion polling assignment. I did share this as an assignment you can edit it as necessary. I made a copy for everyone if you want to get in and take a look at it as we're going through. So the first thing I'll say is that you can work in groups of up to 4 people. If I have one group of 5, I'll let it go because I have 29 people in this class. Okay, so but usually there's a couple groups of 3 here and a group of 2 or whatever. I would say in this type of assignment, like the more is not the merrier. Because like just in terms of like getting sorry, RPG. And that's still good. I would, by the way, I'm gonna stop for a second and thank some of you for emails with condolences to me on Friday night. I did get that from a couple of you guys, and I appreciate it very much. She was my hero, and it's like I am honestly struggling with it, so I do appreciate it very much. So anyway, and then I just have to I should, but I wore my Supreme shirt today. This is the sad part about this shirt though. These are all the women that have ever sat on the Supreme Court. They can all put in one line shirt. That's not okay, but, so anyway, you're Sandra Day O'Connor. And then the below, RBG. And then,
All right, PRBG.
Sonia Sotomayor, and then William Julian. But anyway, so you're pulling assignment. Work in a group. You're going to push out a poll to people. You're going to synthesize the data, and you're going to spin it, which is the most fun part about it, right? So the goal, you have to be able to know exactly what you want to learn from people. And not necessarily the way the poll is going to go, but like, I want to know if people think that hot dogs are sandwiches, okay? And if you live in the world, actually did this, like, a thing about it. And you had to, I think you had to write in a, no, my Gov did write in a thing. I don't know if I do, won't do it or not, but, so this does not have to be government or politics related at all. And I kind of prefer it if it's not, to be honest with you. Just because, like, if this was not an election year, I might make it so we have to do government. But because it is an election year and people are like very polarized right now, it might be better to do questions that are more innocuous. Okay. All right. So you will need, again, you'll need to know the overall goal of what you need to, what you want to learn. You need to hypothesize about what you think the results are going to be. And then, but of course, like, you don't share that with people. Okay, like when they're taking your poll, you're gonna be like, I think everybody's gonna say hot dog and sandwich. What do you think is a hot dog and sandwich? Right? Like, obviously, you're eating people, right? So, the topic, again, like I said, you can create any topic you wish, and like, it doesn't need to be political, but you have to clear your topic and your questions before you push out this poll. That is what is due Wednesday. And there's a specific spot for it in Google Classroom. And really only one person in your group has to do that assignment. Everybody kind of wants to. But the question asks specifically, who's in your group, what is your topic, and then, you know, what are your questions that you're asking, besides demographic questions. Okay, so the criteria for your questions that you come up with. Your poll has to be anywhere from 5 to 8 questions. And that excludes demographic questions. Because you have to collect demographic information from people so that you can compare. You're like, well, you know, more women than men think that, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't know who answered, that was a woman, who answered, that was a man, you're going to contact with that. Okay? So that's why you have to ask demographic questions. You have to know who is responding to your poll, like their names, but you don't share that information. Okay? So, because most people don't like to know that their personal information is going to be shared. But in order for me to know that it's legit, and that you can just take your own survey sometimes, I need to know who is taking the survey. But again, so I guess let them know you're going to share it with me. Your poll cannot have push-pull questions. There's no leading question. Hot dog's a sandwich, right? That's a leading question. By the way, hot dog's not a sandwich, so it's not a leading question.
Thank you.
I knew. Oh, I knew. Hey, shh, you don't have time. Your questions must all make sense to your goal in some way. Okay, so again, like when you're the overarching goal, like what you want to find out from a certain group of people, how are you going to find that out? Those are your questions. And then for your own sake, I would suggest closed-ended questions, just so they're easier for data purposes. Your questions have to be appropriate. Again, I could approve all those. The demographic questions that you have to ask, ask these in the very beginning of your survey. The first 2 questions are ask people for their gender, gender identification, their race and ethnicity, their age, their city and state of residence, and their occupation. Okay, those are just very, very basic demographic questions. They're usually asking in the field of scientific polls anyway. So, now your sample size, you have to have at least 20 different people take your poll, which should be easy to get 4 people in a group and you all share it out, right? Your sample has to be random, but representative of the audience of your poll. So if you were doing a poll about like the high school, then you would want a student. Like, you don't wanna pull like your grandma for what activities you think should be classified, school or teaching or whatever. All right, and then you get into the data report. So you have to include the goal of your public opinion poll. All the demographic information from participants, except names, although like when you're, I would suggest you kind of Google form and then to just share it with me or make a little editor on it so that I can also suggest it. And then that way I can be engaging it and you don't have to do anything else with that. But all of these, like everything you put in your report is broken down. Like of the 30 people we searched today, 15 were female. What did I say, 30? Like, how do I even? Yeah, 15 were female, 15 were men. Okay. 20 of them lived in the city of Marysville, 10 lived outside of it. You know what I mean? So, all questions and answers be broken down by choice and the percentage of them, including the report. A write-up of what you learned from your data. So did you meet your hypothesis? What could you infer from these results? How could you use that to your advantage? How could somebody like on the outside issue your data to their advantage? How could you spin it? That kind of thing. And then, like I said, you're synthesizing all of this, you just share a copy of any of your content. And really the easiest way again to do that is to just put me as an editor on a Google form. Okay. All right, the format, you have to do it online. Just in like North Carolina, like just stand outside of Meyer and take a photo. Like I don't really ever suggest that because you never know how people are gonna act when you like come up with a clipboard in their face. But especially now with COVID, like let's just do this online. Okay. And again, you can just send it specifically to people as long as they're random. You can put it on social media as long as you guys have random, like, people in the audience. Like, again, if you're asking a question about, fixing roads in Marysville, your people should be all different ages of people in Marysville. Okay, you don't need somebody, from like, Macomb County taking that survey. So make sure that you have people that are random in your audience, but also people who matter in your audience. You have to include the title of the poll. You absolutely must include a sentence very prominently in your survey that this is for that. Okay, so just make sure that everybody knows that, and you're not, especially if your question is maybe a little more controversial. You would want people to know that like we're just doing this, like we're in public opinion polling, and I can like create a sentence for you to just put on there for everybody if you want me to do that. And then all your group members' names, just your first name on that survey. Grading, of course, is how well you meet the criteria above 25 points, but there's an additional 5 points for the topic and on time. And then, of course, the assignment is subject to individual grading. So if it's 3 out of your 4 people did the work and then 1 person didn't show up at all, then I do need a full grade. Okay. This is the only problem with Google Meet instead of Zoom is that breakout rooms on here are not quite as easy. So what I want you guys to do is like figure out who's going to be in your group, and then tomorrow we don't meet live, but if you email me your group members, then I can create different breakout rooms for you guys to go into tomorrow during class time. Okay. Hopefully somebody, one of my younger teacher friends before the end of it. All right, are there questions for me on that? Okay, by the end of the day, if you, and you can like stay here and talk to each other if you want to. But by the end of the day, I wanna know who's in the group. And then if you don't have a group by the end of the day, I want to know that too. So some of you might, like if you have 3 people for your group, you might decide to get an additional person. Okay? Alright, so hang out and chat if you need to find a group or find another way to chat with people via phone or email or something like that. Alright. It is now 10:50, so you're free to go. And then I will have breakout rooms open tomorrow during that time. Bye, friends.